My dear one, there is something that was said in a private moment, something that was never meant to stay hidden for long, something that was only supposed to live between two people and nowhere else. And yet, the weight of those words has been drawing closer to you with every passing hour, quietly, steadily, the way truth often moves when it's finally ready to be known. The person you love was standing in front of someone they trust, and for a brief second their voice shifted. It grew softer, slower, almost as though they were guarding something too precious to say out loud. What they said about you did not open with your name, it opened with silence. And that silence held more meaning than any sentence could have carried on its own. Do not look away from this, because what happened in that conversation was far from ordinary. Stay with me until the end, because something significant is waiting for you. A single sentence changed the whole feeling in that room, and the person listening could sense right away that this was not a light, throwaway conversation. Even before your name came up, there was already emotion sitting heavy in the air. They looked away first, not because they had nothing to say, but because they had far too much to say and didn't know where to start. The listener asked something simple. Why do you keep thinking about them? For a few seconds, no answer came. That pause carried more truth than any quick response ever could, because sometimes the deepest truths take their time arriving, especially when they carry real weight. When they finally spoke, the words came out carefully, as if each one had already been living quietly inside them for a long while. They said, I can't quite explain it, but there's something about them that stays with me even when everything else fades away. Really listen to this. That sentence wasn't said carelessly. It came after long thought, after private reflection, after moments they had never shown to anyone else. The person across from them noticed that even while speaking, they seemed to be replaying something in their mind. Maybe it was your voice, maybe your presence, maybe one small detail you never imagined could settle so deeply into someone's heart. Don't turn away now, because what came next was even harder to expect. They were asked, is this serious? And again, silence filled the space, not because of confusion or hesitation, but the kind of silence that shows up when someone already knows the answer, but feels that answer is bigger than what they usually let themselves admit. Then they said, every time I try to push it aside, something brings it right back. That admission changed the whole tone of the conversation, because now it had moved past small talk into a place where buried feelings become almost impossible to keep hidden. The listener leaned in closer, realizing this wasn't some passing emotion. This was something that had outlasted distance, time, distraction, and even pride. The kind of thing that doesn't fade just because life gets busy or people move on to other things. Stay until the end, because something big is still coming. The person you love then described something about you that even surprised the one listening. They didn't start with how you look. They didn't start with circumstances or timing. They started with how your presence feels in memory. They said, even when they're not here, there's still this strange sense of calm that comes over me just thinking about them. That sentence lingered in the air, because calm isn't something people casually mention unless it has truly touched something inside them. Calm means your presence has reached places inside them where noise usually lives. Calm means your memory has settled somewhere that used to hold only confusion. And still the conversation kept going. The listener asked another question. Then why haven't you said more? The response came right away this time, because some things feel too important to speak about carelessly. That answer revealed more truth than they probably meant to share. There are feelings people guard, not out of weakness, but because those feelings matter too much, and even words feel like a risk. They weren't protecting emptiness. They were protecting meaning. Then came the line no one expected, a sentence so direct that even the listener fell quiet afterward. They said, sometimes I wonder if they even realize how much they've changed the way I think. Read that again, let it sit with you, because this is the moment everything shifted. You might not have witnessed the exact instant your presence started affecting them, but somewhere inside them, that moment became one they'll never forget. Something about you reached further than an ordinary memory. Something stayed. Keep going, because the strongest words were still to come. The listener smiled and asked, "So what are you afraid of?" And for the first time, their voice dropped almost to a whisper. They admitted that what they feel might already be bigger than they ever planned for. Those words weren't accidental. They came from someone who had tried to measure their emotions and realized they no longer fit into simple explanations. Bigger than planned means your importance grew far past what they expected. Bigger than planned means what began quietly refused to stay small. And once more, your name came up, this time spoken with an unusual softness, as if simply saying your name changed the atmosphere around them. Stay with this, because something meaningful is still ahead. The listener then asked one last question in that moment. If they were standing here right now, what would you say to them? And again, silence. But this silence felt different. It wasn't uncertainty, it was depth. After that pause, they answered with a truth they had clearly been holding back for far too long. I would probably tell them that they matter more than they realize. That was the sentence that lingered. The one that stayed behind after the conversation ended, the one that kept echoing even as both people moved on to other topics, because some words don't just fade away once they're spoken. Some words stay alive because they came from a place inside someone that had waited far too long to finally speak. And tonight, that sentence carries weight for you too. Not because every mystery gets solved in a single moment, but because hidden truths often start exactly like this, quietly, unexpectedly, through words spoken, the moment someone finally stops pretending they feel nothing. Don't look away, because this is only the beginning of what was said. What happened after that conversation became even more surprising, because the listener didn't let the moment simply end there. They looked directly at the person you love and asked one more question, a question that immediately shifted the expression on their face. When did you first realize they were becoming important to you? That question opened a door they hadn't planned on opening. Stay close, because what came next revealed a truth they had clearly kept hidden longer than anyone realized. Keep reading, because something big is still waiting for you. They didn't answer right away this time. Their eyes drifted down, as if they were searching through memory after memory, trying to pinpoint the exact moment everything began to feel different. Then, slowly, almost carefully, they spoke. It wasn't one big moment, they said. It was a lot of small moments that just refused to fade. That answer completely changed the mood, because small moments carry real power when they last far longer than expected. A voice remembered out of nowhere. A sentence replayed without being invited. A simple gesture that returns to the mind during quiet hours. These aren't random memories. These are signs that someone left a mark far deeper than they meant to admit. The listener picked up on it too and asked, "What kind of moments?" For a second, there was almost a smile. Small, quiet, but real, they said. Then came words that sounded like they'd been waiting inside for a long time. The way they talk without even trying. The way even ordinary things feel different when they're around. The way I remember details I never expected to remember. That sentence was honest in a way that even surprised them. Don't look away now, because this is where the conversation became impossible to brush off. The listener leaned in and said, "You notice more than you let on." And this time there was no denial, only a quiet response. "Yeah, probably more than I should." Those words mattered, because people only talk like that when their heart has already gone further than its usual limits. They had clearly tried to keep things under control, but control gets harder to maintain when someone keeps mattering in these small, quiet ways. Stay until the end. Something big is still waiting for you. Then something happened that surprised even the listener. Your name came up again, but this time with a warmth that couldn't be hidden. Not dramatic, not loud, just genuine. And after saying your name, they added something that completely reshaped everything said before it. "They have no idea how often they cross my mind. That sentence hit hard because frequency reveals the truth. People can hide feelings, but repeated thoughts show what's still genuinely active inside them. When someone crosses your mind often, it means something unresolved is still living there. The listener smiled and asked gently, "So, why keep it to yourself?" The answer came instantly, almost like they had already asked themselves that same question many times before. Because sometimes when something matters this much, you become careful with every word. That wasn't fear, that was value. Carefulness shows up when someone doesn't want their meaning to be misread. Don't look away, because the biggest reveal still hadn't come. The listener asked one final question that shifted everything. What would surprise them most if they heard you right now? And for the first time, there was no long pause. The answer came directly. That I talk about them with more honesty here than I ever have anywhere else. That confession changed the entire mood, because honesty spoken in private often carries more truth than words said out in the open. In that moment, they weren't performing. They weren't trying to impress anyone. They were simply saying what had become impossible to deny. Then came a sentence so unexpected that even the listener went quiet. Sometimes something completely ordinary happens during the day, and somehow it reminds me of them right away. Really think about that. Ordinary moments becoming tied to someone means that person has gone far beyond simple attention. It means your memory shows up in daily life uninvited. A voice, a word, a place, a song, a passing thought. Any of it can suddenly connect back to you. Stay with this. Something meaningful is still ahead. The listener asked softly, "Do you think they'd believe any of this?" A short pause, then a quiet answer. "Probably not, because I never show how much stays in my mind." And that sentence explained everything. Not every feeling arrives loudly. Some stay hidden because the person carrying them is still trying to understand it themselves. Some truths stay behind silence because silence feels safer than revealing too much too fast. But the truth still surfaced that day. Before the conversation wrapped up, one final line appeared, almost like a private truth slipping out by accident. "If they ever knew everything I've said here, they'd understand why forgetting them was never easy." That was the sentence left hanging in the room. No one rushed to break the silence after that, because some words are too complete to interrupt. Don't look away, because what came after this went even deeper, and the next part shows why that conversation didn't end when they left the room. It kept going inside their thoughts long after they walked away. Later, when the conversation should have already been over, something unexpected happened. The person you love didn't leave right away. They lingered there a little longer, as if something unfinished was still pressing on their mind. The listener noticed and stayed quiet, because sometimes silence invites the deepest truth to surface. And it did. Stay close, because the next words came slower than anything said before. Keep going, because something big is still waiting for you. Without being prompted, they suddenly said, "It's strange. Even when I try not to think about them, something always brings them back." That sentence came without any warning, no hesitation, no attempt to change the subject, just honesty showing up unannounced. The listener turned fully toward them, realizing right away that this had stopped being a simple conversation. This had become one of those rare moments when someone starts revealing what they usually keep protected, and then came a silence even deeper than before, because once truth starts flowing, more truth usually follows. A few seconds later, they added, "It happens at random times, right in the middle of ordinary things, and somehow it always feels stronger than the last time." Those words carried more meaning than they probably realized, because random thoughts don't return with that kind of intensity unless the connection behind them is still alive. A passing memory might fade, but something that comes back stronger every time has roots that run much deeper than casual attention. Don't look away, because what they said next changed everything all over again. The listener asked carefully, "What comes back first? The memory, the feeling, or the question?" After a brief pause, the answer came, "The feeling." That answer mattered more than anything said before it, because memory can happen by accident. Feeling is different. Feeling only returns when something inside still recognizes meaning that was never fully resolved. This time, they didn't say your name right away. Instead, they looked down, almost smiling to themselves, then spoke in a voice quieter than before. It's hard to explain, but some people stay in your mind in a way that doesn't ask for permission. That sentence stayed in the room because everyone understands ordinary memories, but this wasn't described as ordinary. This was described as something that shows up on its own, something that remains even as life pulls in other directions. Stay until the end. Something big is still waiting for you. The listener then asked a question that opened an even deeper answer. So what happens when their name comes up? This time, there was no attempt to dodge the truth. They answered, everything else feels less important for a moment. That confession was stronger than they meant it to be, because when someone says everything else fades, even briefly, it means their attention naturally shifts toward what matters more than they expected. Then came another sentence, spoken carefully, almost as if they knew it revealed too much. I've started noticing details I never thought I'd care about. The listener asked, what kind of details? A short breath then. The way they talk, certain words they use, even little things nobody else would think twice about. That answer explained what had been hidden the whole time. Attention always reveals value. People don't remember small details unless those details have quietly become important. Don't look away because the strongest part was still coming. The listener said softly, you sound like someone who's already given this a lot of thought. For the first time, they didn't deny it. Instead, they answered with a sentence that completely shifted the mood. Maybe I've given it more thought than anyone realizes. That sentence landed heavily because hidden thoughts often carry more truth than what's said out loud. What people express openly can be limited. What they think privately runs much deeper. Then came something unexpected, almost like a confession to themselves. Sometimes I wonder if they can feel any of this without me ever saying it out loud. That's the kind of sentence that only shows up once feelings have moved well past simple curiosity, because people don't wonder whether someone can sense their thoughts unless those thoughts have become constant enough to truly matter. Stay until the end, because something big is still waiting for you. The listener asked one final question before the moment shifted. If they were standing here right now and heard everything, what would be hardest for you to admit? There was a longer pause than before, a pause full of thought. Then came the answer, spoken with unusual honesty. That I've tried to act normal while carrying so much more than I ever planned to. That sentence quietly revealed everything. Trying to act normal means something inside has already shifted. Carrying more than planned means the emotion has traveled further than expected. And before they left, they added one more line that stayed behind, because what happened after they walked away revealed even more than what they said out loud. After they left, the conversation should have ended right there. But it didn't, because sometimes the strongest truth isn't what someone says in the room, but what they do the moment they walk out of it. The person you love only took a few steps before stopping again, not because anyone called them back, not because anything interrupted them. They stopped because their own thoughts had suddenly grown louder than everything happening around them. Don't look away, because what happened in that quiet moment revealed more than anything said before it. Stay until the end, because something big is still waiting for you. They stared at nothing for a few seconds, almost replaying every word they had just admitted. Then, very softly, as though speaking only to themselves, they said your name again. That mattered, because people only repeat a name in silence when the feeling behind it is still very much alive, even after the conversation has ended. The listener, who hadn't fully walked away yet, noticed this and asked one final, unexpected question. Why do you always go quiet after talking about them? That question came out of nowhere, and this time the answer arrived with no attempt to hide anything. Because every time I talk honestly about them, I realize how much I usually leave unsaid. That sentence completely reshaped everything said before it. It meant the earlier words weren't the whole truth. They were only the part that managed to escape. Don't look away, because what came next carried even more weight. The listener stayed still and asked carefully, "Then what's left unsaid?" A longer silence followed, not an empty silence, a thoughtful one. Then, in a lower voice, they said, "Some days I pretend I'm focused on other things, but even then, something small reminds me of them before the day's over." That answer was quiet but powerful, because hidden remembrance is often stronger than something spoken out loud. If someone shows up in your thoughts, even during the most ordinary hours, it means they're not just remembered, they've become woven into the rhythm of everyday life. Stay until the end. Something big is still waiting for you. Then came another question. What kind of small things? And the answer arrived almost instantly, as though those moments had been counted many times already. A phrase, a sound, a place, even a simple moment that suddenly feels connected. That sentence carried something remarkable, because connection isn't forced into existence. It cannot be negotiated into being, chased into permanence, or manufactured through endless effort. Genuine connection unfolds quietly, almost invisibly, beneath ordinary conversations, shared moments, and seemingly insignificant exchanges. Long before anyone consciously recognizes what is happening, the emotional landscape has already begun to change. Familiarity transforms into comfort. Curiosity grows into genuine concern. A person's presence starts influencing the rhythm of another's thoughts without permission or intention. It appears naturally once someone has already taken up more space inside the heart than expected. This doesn't happen because of grand declarations or carefully crafted performances. It happens through consistency, emotional safety, and countless small moments that gradually weave themselves into memory. A certain voice becomes calming after a difficult day. A particular laugh begins echoing long after the conversation has ended. Small habits, expressions, and even silence become strangely meaningful. Without realizing it, the mind starts making room for someone in places that once belonged only to solitude. Psychologically, this reflects one of the quietest truths about human attachment. The heart rarely announces the exact moment when someone becomes important. There is no dramatic signal, no unmistakable turning point. Instead, affection accumulates almost invisibly, much like water slowly filling a hidden reservoir. Each shared experience adds another drop. Each moment of understanding strengthens an emotional bridge. By the time someone realizes how deeply another person matters, the connection has often been growing for far longer than either of them understood. This is why authentic emotional bonds feel effortless rather than manufactured. They are not sustained by constant persuasion or emotional pressure. They grow because two inner worlds gradually become familiar to one another. Trust begins replacing uncertainty. Vulnerability no longer feels dangerous. Even ordinary moments acquire unexpected depth because they are experienced together rather than alone. What once felt like coincidence slowly becomes a quiet sense of belonging. There is also something profoundly revealing about this process. People often believe love begins with overwhelming emotion, yet enduring connection usually begins with repeated experiences of emotional reliability. Feeling seen, understood, respected, and emotionally safe creates conditions where affection can deepen naturally. The heart responds less to perfection than to presence. It remembers who consistently brought peace rather than confusion, clarity rather than chaos, acceptance rather than judgment. That is why true connection cannot be imitated through manipulation or urgency. Attempts to force closeness often create resistance because genuine attachment requires freedom. The deepest relationships are rarely built on desperation. They are built on mutual willingness, shared emotional experiences, and the gradual discovery that another person's existence has become woven into one's own emotional world. Eventually, there comes a subtle realization. Thoughts begin drifting toward that person without deliberate intention. Important moments feel incomplete until they are shared. Their absence becomes noticeable not because dependency has formed, but because their presence has quietly become part of life's emotional rhythm. At that point, connection is no longer something being pursued. It has already taken root beneath awareness, expanding silently until it occupies far more space within the heart than anyone ever expected. And then, for the first time, there was a smile they couldn't hide, small but unmistakable. The listener noticed and asked, "Why are you smiling now?" The answer was surprising. "Because some memories show up before I even call for them." That sentence hung there like a truth too honest to walk back. Memories arriving without effort means your presence has settled somewhere deeper than intention ever could. Don't look away, because what came next was the strongest line yet. The listener said quietly, "You talk like they changed something important in you." And after one breath, they answered. They did, even if they never fully saw it happen. That confession changed everything, because change isn't something people admit casually. People only acknowledge being changed when they've felt a lasting difference within themselves. Then came a sentence so unexpected that even the listener had no immediate response. "There are moments I wonder if they understand just how naturally my thoughts return there. Not forced, not dramatic, just a natural pullback." And that word mattered. Because whatever returns naturally usually runs deeper than anything that only shows up through effort. Stay until the end, because something big is still waiting for you. The listener finally asked one last question before parting ways. If they ever heard every word you said today, what would surprise them the most? This time, the answer came without hesitation. "That I speak carefully on the outside, but inside, my thoughts are so much louder." That line revealed what had stayed hidden the entire time, quiet on the surface, louder underneath. Someone who carries strong thoughts often chooses fewer words, not because there's less to feel, but because there's too much to explain simply. And before they were completely gone, they added one final truth softly, almost as though speaking to the air itself. Sometimes what matters most only becomes visible in the things you never say out loud. That sentence remained long after everything else had ended, because some truths don't need volume to be unforgettable. Don't look away, because what happened later, once they were completely alone, revealed something even deeper than anything they had dared to admit in front of someone else. Alone, there's no audience left to perform for, no listener waiting for the next honest answer, only the quiet space where a person finally lets their guard fall completely. And it's in that space, more than in any conversation, that the truest feelings tend to surface, unfiltered, unscripted, and impossible to explain away by morning.